Hello family, welcome to Stories with Compiler. Please subscribe and leave a like for us, it means the world to us. Also share this video with your friends and loved ones and turn on post notifications so you don't miss future videos from us. Thank you as you do so. Sit back and relax as we dive into the story. The gates of Adam Okechukwu's Banana Island mansion glided open like a palace revealing its king. A fleet of cars sparkled in the morning sun. From a bulletproof G-Wagon to a silver Rolls-Royce he barely drove. Inside, the mansion breathed wealth, marble floors, imported art, glass chandeliers, chefs and housekeepers moving like clockwork. Adam, one of Lagos' most respected tech billionaires, sipped his fresh pineapple juice by the poolside, watching his elegant wife, Eve, do a fashion shoot on the lawn. They had it all: luxury, fame, influence, and to the world, they were untouchable. But beneath the surface, Adam was restless. While Eve was charming and well-liked in social circles, Adam began to notice how quickly her warmth would turn cold when the cameras were gone. She spoke less about their love and more about her followers, her brand, her relevance. At night, when they lay on their separate sides of the bed, she'd scroll through Instagram while he stared into the dark ceiling, his heart echoing an emptiness he couldn't explain. Staff bowed at his feet, yet something in their eyes felt distant, robotic. Was it all just a performance bought by money? That evening, after a board meeting that had nothing to do with business and everything to do with loyalty, Adam made a quiet decision. He would carry out a test. Not just for Eve, but for everyone around him. He needed to know who truly stood by him, not his status. He would fake a fall. No announcements, no press releases. Just silence, and watch who would run and who would stay. In that silence, he hoped to finally hear the truth. The next few days, Adam stayed unusually quiet, spending hours in his study. His personal assistant noticed his silence. He canceled several appearances. He began liquidating small parts of his company quietly, selling assets through proxies, and ensured that only his most trusted lawyer, Mr. Kareem, knew the plan. Adam crafted a fake EFCC investigation that would go viral across blogs and gossip columns. He blocked all staff salaries and shut down internal accounts. The illusion was perfect and devastating. That night, while Eve was posting a video in a designer gown with the caption, "Too blessed to be stressed," Adam stood by the window, watching the city he helped build flicker with lights. He whispered under his breath, "Let's see who stays when the lights go out." It wasn't a game. It was a necessity. He needed to know if he was truly loved or simply useful. And this test, would break illusions and separate soul from shadow. By the third day, the media had picked it up. Adam Okechukwu under EFCC watch. Tech empire in trouble. It spread like wildfire. Calls flooded in. Eve screamed at him, demanding answers. Adam simply said, "It's all going to be fine." But deep inside, he braced for the explosion. He knew this test could cost him everything, but he was finally ready to find out if there was anything real left in his world. Eve paced the living room like a lioness in stilettos. The air conditioning couldn't chill the tension between them. "Why didn't you tell me this before it hit the blogs?" she hissed. "Do you know what this does to my image?" She didn't ask about him, about how he felt, or what the future held. She asked about her image, her brand deals, her stylist's confusion. It was the moment Adam stopped hoping. He simply replied, "I wanted to see what mattered to you." The next morning, the chef called in sick and never returned. The laundryman left the clothes half-washed. The security guards stopped showing up one by one, giving excuses. The mansion, once full of movement, began to feel like an empty cathedral. Only one person kept working, Dupe, the quiet housemaid. She never asked for her salary, never complained. She prayed in the morning with her son, fed Adam even when food was scarce, and smiled gently with every plate she carried. Eve, on the other hand, began making long calls behind closed doors. One day, Adam overheard her on the phone whispering. He was never like this before. "Emeka, you were the only one who really got me." I wish. Adam didn't need to hear more. The storm had arrived, but it wasn't from outside. It was the betrayal he suspected, now unfolding before his very eyes. In less than a week, Adam became a ghost in his own home. The once bustling mansion now echoed with the emptiness of exposed loyalty. Eve stayed out later, barely bothering to explain. When Adam asked her directly, she scoffed. "What are you doing with your life right now? Should I just sit here and watch everything fall apart?" She was no longer pretending. He had stripped away the curtain, and the act was over. The staff WhatsApp group, which used to buzz with gratitude and memes, went completely silent. The driver stopped responding to calls. The chef posted a passive-aggressive throwback video of the mansion, captioned "Good things don't last." Adam watched it all unfold, not with anger, but with quiet resignation. People were never his enemies. Expectations were, and they had all failed. The only presence that remained consistent was Dupe. Each night, she'd knock on the door with warm water and quietly ask, "Sir, should we pray?" And in those moments, on bare floor tiles, with flickering candlelight, Adam felt more peace than in all his years in boardrooms and banquets. But beneath that peace simmered a new resolve. He was going to lose everyone and rebuild, not to prove anything, but to discover everything. Eve stood in front of the mirror applying her red lipstick, dressed in a short designer gown Adam hadn't seen before. He asked her where she was going, and without blinking she said, "Out. I need to breathe. This place is beginning to choke me." Adam's silence only enraged her more. She whirled on him, raising her voice for the first time since the scandal broke. "You should have told me this was coming. Do you know what I've sacrificed for this marriage? My image, my following. My brand is sinking because you're hiding like a coward." But in her rant, Adam noticed something. She never once asked if he was okay. It wasn't love in her eyes anymore. It was panic, not for him, but for her lifestyle. That night, Adam saw her sneak a call in the corridor, whispering with a softness he hadn't heard in years. He leaned in silently and caught the name Emeka, the same Emeka she once said was a phase before they married. The call was flirtatious, nostalgic, emotional. "You always understood me, Emeka. He was never like you." That was all Adam needed to hear. When she left the house that night, she didn't even say goodbye. And when she returned at 2 a.m., smelling of whiskey and unfamiliar cologne, she didn't bother hiding it. Instead, she scoffed, "You created this mess. Don't blame me for cleaning it up." The next morning, Adam sat alone in the dining room with a bowl of cold pap. The chef was gone. The cleaner, too. His phone buzzed with news headlines, but his world was already quiet. He stared at the empty chair across from him, where Eve used to sit every morning with her perfect posture and cold coffee. There was no wife anymore, just a stranger who lived in his house. The test was working, painfully so. The truth wasn't just ugly, it was cruel. In the quiet that followed the staff exodus, only one figure moved through the house with grace: Dupe the maid. A slender, dark-skinned woman in her early 30s. She was a single mother who had once been on the verge of homelessness before Adam hired her. Unlike the others, she didn't ask about her unpaid salary. She cooked meals with what little remained in the pantry and swept the house even when no one noticed. Her son, Toby, often sat in the corner, doing homework or reading his Bible out loud. And every night, Dupe would knock gently on Adam's door and say, "Sir, would you like us to pray?" Adam found comfort in those small acts. One morning, he asked her why she hadn't left like the others. She hesitated, then said, "Because you helped me when I had no one. You didn't judge me when you found out I was a single mother. You gave me dignity. Let me stay, sir. Let me at least return the kindness." It wasn't just what she said. It was how she said it. No bitterness, no pity, just peace. It was the first time Adam felt like someone saw him. Not his title, not his net worth, but his soul. Their nightly prayers became sacred. They never lasted more than 10 minutes. But in that time, Adam began to feel something returning, his sense of purpose. The kind of peace that doesn't come from wealth or applause. One night, during prayer, he opened his eyes just for a second and saw Dupe's face, eyes shut, hand gently on her son's shoulder, lips moving in quiet tongues. It was beauty without makeup, strength without arrogance. For the first time in years, Adam didn't feel like a king. He felt like a man. And he was grateful. Adam found the receipts in Eve's handbag the day she forgot to lock it. Hotel room bookings. Private dining reservations. One entry in particular crushed him. A weekend getaway to Calabar. Not with him. With Emeka. When he confronted her, she didn't deny it. "What do you want me to say?" she said coldly. "You faked your downfall and expected me to pretend? You were never really present in this marriage. Emeka was always there." Her words were like acid. For a second, Adam regretted not actually being poor, because maybe then he wouldn't feel so humiliated. He sat in the living room that evening alone, with the documents spread out in front of him. The marriage was dead, not because of the fake downfall, but because the love had died long before. The money only delayed the reality. He realized that Eve had never loved him for him. She loved what he could provide, the lifestyle, the attention, the power of being a billionaire's wife. What hurt the most was not the affair. It was the fact that he wasn't even surprised. That night, Duke brought him dinner, yam porridge with smoked fish. He barely touched it. She asked if she should pray. He nodded. Her voice was calm, steady. "God, we thank you for broken things, because sometimes you use them to rebuild better." Adam burst into tears for the first time in years. In front of her. He didn't care anymore. He let it all out. And she just placed a hand on his back and said nothing. That silence held more compassion than all the sweet words Eve had ever said. In the weeks that followed, Adam and Duke grew closer in the most unexpected ways. They talked over leftovers, shared morning devotions, and sometimes sat in the compound watching her son chase lizards with a stick. The bond was quiet but real. There were no grand gestures, just presence. Adam began to laugh again. Not the forced, business lunch laughter, but genuine chuckles from deep in his chest. Toby had started calling him Uncle Adam, and Adam didn't correct him. The child was warm, polite, and clearly raised with love, the kind he rarely felt in his own home. One evening, after a long conversation about faith and forgiveness, Adam found himself watching Dupe as she washed dishes under the kitchen light. Her face glowed with sweat, her eyes distant, thoughtful. Without thinking, he walked up behind her and said softly, "I think I'm falling for you." She turned, surprised, the water still running. For a moment, there was silence. Then she whispered, "Sir, you're still married. I won't be the woman who sins because you're broken." Adam respected her more in that moment than he had ever respected anyone. She wasn't rejecting him. She was protecting his soul. It wasn't just about morals. It was about timing, about healing, about boundaries. That night, Adam lay awake in bed, not because he was sad, but because he was in awe. For the first time in his life, he had met a woman whose strength didn't come from her beauty or her name, but from her integrity. And that, he realized, was priceless. Temptation is strongest when pain is fresh. It was one of those rainy Lagos nights, the kind that silences the city's usual chaos. Adam sat in his once sprawling study, now barely lit, the walls echoing memories of happier times. With a glass of unfinished palm wine by his side, he stared at the thunderclouds outside, trying to swallow the bitterness in his chest. All around him was quiet. Eve hadn't returned home in 2 days. The staff were gone. The house felt like a mausoleum. Only Duke moved silently, sweeping the corridor, humming gospel softly. Her song entered his space like a bomb, not loud enough to disturb, but impossible to ignore. Later that night, after dinner, Duke brought him hot water and quietly said, "Would you like to pray?" He nodded, and she placed her hand gently on his shoulder. Her voice trembled with sincerity, calling on God to heal broken things, to restore peace, to soften betrayal. As the prayer ended, Adam didn't stand. He looked at her, eyes swollen from crying, and whispered, "I think I'm falling for you, Dupe." She froze, not because she didn't feel something too, but because her spirit warned her that the timing was dangerous. After a pause, she stood up, gently took his hand off her wrist, and said, "Sir, you're still married. I cannot break what God still considers a vow, no matter how damaged it looks." Adam didn't argue. He simply nodded, watching her retreat with dignity. In that moment, He felt something he hadn't felt in years: respect. Not just for her, but for the boundaries she drew. She wasn't like the others. She wasn't eager to fill a gap or gain a title. She was grounded, and her refusal, though painful, became the most powerful answer he had received in a long time. Love without principle is still a form of loss. Let her take the palace. I'll build a home elsewhere. Eve came back with fire. Her lawyers had prepared everything. Despite Adam's supposed financial ruin, they were convinced he had assets hidden. "You can't fool me," she snapped, tossing legal papers at him. "You're rich. You always will be. I want what's mine." Adam looked at her, tired, not from the argument, but from the futility of fighting someone who had never truly been his partner. He didn't contest the terms. He signed everything over. The Banana Island house, the cars, the residual shares. The lawyers were stunned. Eve was speechless. "That's it?" she asked. "You're not going to fight?" "No," Adam said quietly. "What I lost wasn't money. It was something far more valuable, but thankfully, it wasn't tied to this house." With that, he packed a single bag, a laptop, a change of clothes, and a Bible Dupe had once gifted him. As he stepped into the rain, Eve watched from the balcony with a mixture of triumph and confusion. She had won the castle, yes, but she didn't realize the king had already left it behind. The wealth was in his heart now, not his account. As Adam left the gate behind him for the final time, the emptiness felt like a rebirth. He walked down the street with no driver, no escort, no luxury, and for the first time in years, he was free. Not from the mansion, not from the expectations, but from her, Eve, the woman who loved the crown more than the man beneath it. Testing others may reveal the truth, but life will test you too. Weeks after the divorce, Adam received devastating news. A quiet investment he'd made years ago, one of his last safety nets, collapsed due to internal fraud. His lawyer confirmed it. He was now genuinely broke. Not pretend broke. Not temporarily tight. Real, staring at zero kind of broke. All bank accounts frozen due to external audits. The irony burned deeper than any betrayal Eve had served him. He had pretended to lose everything, and now he actually had. He laughed bitterly. "Is this karma, or just life being poetic?" he whispered into the wind. He called Eve. No answer. He sent a message. Just needed to talk. The two blue ticks stayed unread. He tried Emika's old line, disconnected. In that moment, the truth hit harder than before. They were never in his life for him, only for the gold. And now that the shine was gone, so were they. It was as if he never existed. The man who once stood on Forbes covers now sat alone at a roadside suya joint, chewing meat slowly while counting coins. He returned to the only place that still felt human, Dupe's compound in Surulere. He knocked gently. She opened the door, surprised. "You're back." He nodded, eyes heavy. "I lost everything. For real this time." She didn't gasp. She didn't panic. She stepped aside and said, "There's always space here. Sit. I'll warm food." That one act, not of pity, but of peace, reminded him that maybe, just maybe, he still had something left. Dupe's flat was small but clean. One room. A thin mattress. Plastic chairs. No air conditioning. Just a standing fan that rattled like a tired bird. But to Adam, it was a palace of mercy. Every morning, he woke up to the sound of roosters and Dupe reading Bible verses to Toby in the corner. She offered him her portion of bread, even when it meant she had less. He began helping with house chores. He cleaned gutters, fetched water, and even learned how to light a charcoal stove. The man who once oversaw BILLIONAIRE deals now bargained with pepper sellers in Ojalegba. One afternoon, Dupe brought out an old Kiki her late brother had left behind. "It doesn't move fast, but it moves," she smiled. Adam looked at her, puzzled. "Let's start something with it. Maybe deliveries. You know Lagos. You know strategy. I know this area." That day, they began what would later become their first step back. Dupe and Adam Logistics, a name Toby created with crayons on cardboard paper. Adam drove. Dupe handled dispatch calls. Toby helped with packaging. They were a team. Of course, it wasn't easy. Some customers laughed when they saw Adam, once a tycoon, now delivering Mwamwa coolers to local homes. Others whispered and pointed, but Adam didn't flinch. He had been through humiliation and still found peace. In every delivery, in every sweaty ride through Lagos traffic, he wasn't just regaining income, he was regaining himself. Slowly, the hustle began to blossom, and for the first time, Adam no longer wanted to go back to what he had. He wanted to go forward with what he had found. And a storm is better than noise in a palace. The streets of Surulere whispered like wild wind when word got out. The once untouchable billionaire Adam Okechukwu was now delivering goods in a faded Kiki Napep. Former staff from Banana Island snickered in WhatsApp groups. Old business partners laughed over cocktails, mocking his fall from grace. Photos of him carrying cartons went viral on social media. Eve even posted a cryptic status. When kings forget their crowns, they become messengers. It was meant to sting, but Adam didn't flinch. Not this time. His crown wasn't gold anymore, it was peace. In the midst of public mockery, Adam and Dupe built a quiet routine. Each morning, Dupe prayed over the deliveries. Each evening, Adam gave a share of profit to stock up supplies and sometimes pay for Toby's books. They didn't have much, but they had each other's honesty, something money had never bought him. Sometimes, after a long day, they'd sit on the veranda with bowls of Gary and groundnuts, laughing over neighborhood gossip. Dupe's laughter, raw and unfiltered, became Adam's therapy. One Sunday morning, an old acquaintance from Adam's past, Chief Adedoyan, stopped him at Mile 2 Market. "You driving Kiki?" he asked, half in pity, half in disbelief. Adam smiled and replied, "Yes, sir. It delivers faster than most people I trusted." The man walked away speechless, but Adam wasn't embarrassed. In fact, for the first time in his life, he was finally unburdened. He wasn't carrying wealth or expectations, only purpose. And that, he realized, made him richer than ever. The logistics business quietly exploded. Customers loved how punctual and respectful Adam was, never knowing he once sat in Forbes' top 20. Orders tripled within months, and they expanded with 2 more Kikis. Dupe's name was on all the business documents, not because Adam didn't trust himself, but because he trusted her more than he ever trusted his former board of directors. She managed the money with honesty, stretching every naira like a true survivor of Lagos life. Together, they had built something no one could take from them, not even fate. Their chemistry, though unspoken, grew thicker with each passing day. Adam found himself watching her when she didn't notice, the way she scolded Toby gently, the way she tied her scarf before morning prayer, the little laugh she had when trying to balance their cash book. One night, under the flickering bulb of their veranda, Adam took her hand in his and said, "Dupe, will you marry me?" For a moment, she said nothing. Her eyes softened, but her words were steady. "Not yet, sir. You need to fully heal. Marrying a woman should never be your medicine. Heal first, then we'll talk love." Adam respected her answer. It didn't sting, it strengthened him. Her love wasn't desperate. It was rooted. She didn't want the Adam who was still healing from betrayal. She wanted the whole man. And so, he went back to work, not to impress her, but to become a man worthy of the peace she carried in her presence. Love wasn't a rescue for him anymore. It was a destination he had to walk to, slowly, with intention. Fools trade diamonds for flashlights until night comes. Eve's dream began to unravel like cheap lace. Emeka, the man she believed would love her through her storms, turned out to be a fraud. He had sweet words and big promises, but no foundation. One morning, she woke up and he was gone. The cars were gone. The documents for her Lekki apartment, forged and transferred. Even the expensive wristwatch she gifted him was missing. Left behind was a note. "Thanks for the ride. Good luck building from scratch." Her world crashed. Friends stopped answering her calls. She was no longer an influencer. She was just another abandoned woman in Lagos. She reached out to Adam in panic, dialing his old number. It rang. It connected, but he didn't pick. She sent a message. "Please. I need help. I was wrong." No reply. She sent another. "You were the only one who ever truly cared. I see that now." but the messages remained unread. Her pride collapsed as hunger crept in. The woman who once refused to eat in public now begged a former housekeeper for Gary. Her followers had vanished. Her filters couldn't save her. And the worst part? She knew exactly where she went wrong. Meanwhile, Adam sat in the office he and Dupe shared, a simple plywood desk with handwritten order books. He stared at the message on his phone, thumb hovering over the screen. But he didn't reply. Not out of hate, out of finality. She had made her choice when the crown fell. And now that the dust had settled, she realized the diamonds she threw away weren't just shiny. They were rare. But diamonds, once lost, don't return to dirt. It was a Wednesday afternoon. Adam was loading crates into a customer's delivery cart when Dupe came running. "Sir, someone's outside." "It's Eve." Adam froze. Slowly, he wiped his forehead, dropped the crate, and walked outside. There she stood, in cheap Ankara, no makeup, slippers half torn. She looked nothing like the woman he once married. Her pride was gone. Her eyes were hollow, swollen. She looked at him the way a refugee looks at a ship, desperate, apologetic, afraid. "Adam," she said, voice cracking. "I'm sorry." Adam didn't respond immediately. He just looked at her, not in judgment, but in deep reflection. Here was a woman who once mocked his downfall, who laughed when others laughed, who traded their vows for vanity. And now she was at his gate, asking for something she once burned. "I forgave you a long time ago, Eve," he said calmly. But forgiveness doesn't always mean returning to the same door. That door closed long before you knocked. Eve wept, real tears. She fell to her knees. Neighbors watched in silence. Dupe stood beside Adam, not in competition, not in arrogance, but in quiet strength. She didn't smile. She didn't mock. She simply watched a broken woman fall apart, just as she once had. But this time, she wasn't the one on the ground. She was the one standing next to a man who had risen from it. Revenge is heavy. Forgiveness is light. After Eve left Adam's gate in tears, Dupe sat in silence on the edge of their small living room bench, arms folded. Adam paced. His heart was at war. "She didn't just leave me, Dupe," he said bitterly. "She laughed while I fell. She humiliated me. Dupe interrupted, softly but firmly. "And still she's hungry. She's broken. I'm not saying you take her back. I'm saying, don't let her drown." The tension between them was thick. Dupe wasn't asking Adam to love Eve again, just to let go of the bitterness that still poisoned the air when her name was mentioned. That night, they prayed, but the prayer was different. Adam didn't ask for breakthrough. He asked for release. "Help me let go, Lord. Not for her, but for my own freedom." Days later, without telling Dupe, he wired 1.2 million Nigerian nairas anonymously to Eve's landlord and cleared the overdue rent. He also instructed a lawyer to deliver food vouchers to her, all under the name, "A friend you once knew." He never spoke about it. He didn't need to. Peace began returning to his eyes, and Dupe noticed. Weeks later, Eve got the alert and fell to her knees. She cried, not out of entitlement, but because she knew only one person could have done it, the one she betrayed, and that realization broke her deeper than poverty ever could. That same day, she deleted her Instagram and went offline. Sometimes the loudest apology is silence, and the truest forgiveness is the one that doesn't need applause. Some love stories don't need hashtags, just truth. It was a simple Thursday night when Adam and Dupe finally said "I do." No press, no photographers, just a white rented tent on a dusty Surreal street and plastic chairs decorated with faded ribbons. Dupe wore a modest Ankara gown with hand-sewn pearls. Adam wore a plain white kaftan. Toby stood proudly between them, holding the rings like a prince at a coronation. As the officiating pastor raised his hand to pray, light rain began to fall, not heavy, just soft, like a blessing whispered from heaven. Neighbors gathered with warm smiles. Children clapped. Dupe's old friends from her former church hummed harmonies as she walked down the makeshift aisle. It wasn't luxury, but it was love. When Adam slipped the ring on her finger, his voice broke. "I found you in my worst days. You stayed when I had nothing. And now I give you all I have, Not gold, not glory, but truth. The kiss wasn't long or dramatic. It was humble, sacred, the kind of kiss born from fire and healing. As they danced that night under fairy lights strung between zinc roofs, there were no trending hashtags, no designer tags, just real people celebrating a real miracle. And in that moment, Adam realized something. You don't need a palace to marry a queen. 6 months later, Dupe sat in their tiny office with a whiteboard full of plans. She and Adam had launched the Better Love Foundation, an NGO dedicated to training and empowering domestic workers, single mothers, and widows across Lagos. It started small, with vocational training, sewing, cooking, dispatch logistics, and even basic financial literacy. But their story had already touched many hearts. Donations poured in. Volunteers signed up. The mission grew. They didn't talk much about their past, not to seek pity, but because their future was now louder than their pain. Adam visited local prisons to speak to broken men about pride, forgiveness, and second chances. Dupe mentored young girls who were pregnant and abandoned. Every story they heard reminded them, not everyone has the strength to rise alone. Sometimes, people just need one hand that refuses to let go. One day, during a women's empowerment workshop, a young girl asked Dupe, "Ma, how did you go from being a maid to a madam?" Dupe smiled and answered gently, "I didn't become a madam. I just became more of who I already was, and God gave me someone who finally saw it." The room went quiet, and in that silence, many hearts healed. Years later, Adam stood on the TEDx stage in Victoria Island, not in a suit, but in a simple native wear stitched by one of their foundation trainees. His talk was titled, "The Day I Lost Everything and Found Myself." He spoke with tears, not as a billionaire, but as a man who had tasted betrayal, brokenness, redemption, and love. His words cut deep. "I pretended to lose everything, and everyone left. But the one who stayed, stayed even after I really lost everything. And through her, I found God again. I found peace again. I found myself again." The crowd gave a standing ovation, but Adam wasn't moved by applause anymore. His heart was with Dupe, who watched quietly from the audience, holding Toby's hand. They didn't smile because of the crowd. They smiled because they knew what it had cost to get there. And that night, Adam stood by the window of their modest home, looked at the stars, and whispered, "I used to ask God for riches. Now, I just thank Him for what money could never buy." If you were tested with nothing, would you still stay? Is it loyalty if it cost you nothing? Is wealth still wealth if you're lonely at the top? What matters most? Who claps when you win? Or who kneels when you lose? Please drop your thoughts in the comment section. Don't forget to share, subscribe, and like. Thank you for watching.